we're live. All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of the Beyond the Red Door podcast. This is Austin and Dom, if you want to introduce yourself. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself? We have our 3 lovely guests, the boys from Ruck. We have Ian, we have Tim, and we have Sean. Thank you guys so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. We'd love to hear so much about all your Ruck experience. But for now, let's just kind of go down the line, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, major, the usual ice-breaking stuff you kind of hear in a classroom, but a bit more relaxed and not as much pressure. Ian, do you want to start?
I sure can. So, hey everyone, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Ian Seidler. I'm the current president of Wisconsin-Theta. I'm a senior software engineering major, and I joined my freshman year, and I had the privilege to recently go to Ruck with these 2 fine gentlemen. So,
awesome. Tim, you want to go next?
Yeah, so my name's Tim Highum. I'm a junior from Rushford, Minnesota, majoring in industrial technology management with minors in metals and drafting. And as Ian stated above here, that I also was privileged to get to go to Ruck with these 2 fine gentlemen.
What's your position within the chapter?
Oh yes, also I am the vice president of member development with the fraternity as well.
Awesome. And Sean?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sean McGrath. I am an industrial technology management major at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. I am a senior this semester, and my minors are technical drafting, and I am the current vice president of communications. And I also had the absolute privilege of attending Ruck this summer with these guys.
Oh, they're not fine gentlemen to you?
No, just guys.
Do I look like a fine gentleman to you?
You look like a distinguished gentleman, Ian.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, so as all 3 of them said already, they were the Ruck Scholars this year for Wisconsin-Theta. So how about you guys just kind of dive in and tell us about your overall Ruck experience, the excitement maybe you found out about when you found out about it, and just kind of start from there and lay it all out.
Yeah, I guess this whole entire journey kind of started out with once I received an email that the applications were open. I took a look back at what Ruck was, and at least in the Wisconsin-Theta's history, what Ruck was. And the most we had sent at one time was 2 people. And I took a look at, the people in the chapter at the time, and I thought we could break that record and kind of take it back by storm, especially since this was the first time in person. We didn't really get a good understanding of how selective it was at the time. So I made it a goal for us to have at least 10 people apply. We have 11, so I'm very thankful for that. But when the results originally came out, I was selected and Sean and Tim were on the waiting list. And I was really hoping that Sean and Tim would both be able to go, because not only is Sean in a role that's up and coming, VP of Communications, but Tim's also a sophomore. So I'm sorry if I'm stealing you guys' thunder, but I just kind of want to convey how excited I was that we not only broke that record of sending 3 guys to Ruck from a chapter of 30 people, which is very impressive to the other schools I talked to as well, but also, who we are and for the future. Ruck for me, up to you.
Oh, absolutely. It was amazing when Tim and I both got the email. I was sitting in my drafting class that morning and get the email on my phone. I'm like, this is just crazy. Put it out in the group chat. Everyone was just ecstatic. I remember running to the house after my class. I got that group photo of us with the chapter flag, just celebrating the fact that we had gotten into Ruck. That was just an amazing feeling to know that we had gotten into the Top Gun, as they call it, of SIGEP leadership. And it was so much fun too.
Yeah, going off of that, we got put on the waiting list, and they said it was kind of like the COVID waiting list or whatever, and I'm sitting, after I got that email, I'm like, okay, COVID's still kind of hanging around, I'm going to be surprised if we hear anything back from them, but then we got the email there, I think it was early May, saying, hey, we're lifting everything, you guys all get to come, and, I was just in shock. I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to Virginia this summer, boys. So I was very excited and had the week marked on my calendar for a while now. So
So how long before, what was the timeline between like the wait list and actually getting that email? How long did you guys have to wait for that?
I want
I
to say like
wanna
2
s-
weeks, right?
Oh, I thought it was longer than that. I want to say it was closer to a month or a month and a half.
It was because I registered. When I registered, it was 70 days, but when you guys sent me your registration, it was about 40, so somewhere in between there. But I think it's really saying something about Ruck, the fact of we've just heard about it through word of mouth, and all three of us were actually very excited to go. In talking with the small group, so if you're unfamiliar with Ruck, it's like Sean said, kind of the Top Gun program that SIGEP offers. So they fly this year. We had 140 undergraduates out of like 650 applicants were selected to travel to Richmond, the University of Richmond, where Sigma Phi Epsilon was founded, and take a deep dive into several aspects of leadership, kind of reflecting on your own leadership. Some fun activities here and there, a workout that was fantastic, but these two went to yoga, so they needed a little bit of a stretch, I guess. And it was all over in the blink of an eye. And like I said before, we had only heard about this through word of mouth. The last Ruck Scholars we had were in 2019, which is when Sean and I were a freshman, and Tim was still in high school.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to say that it blew my expectations out of the water. Sean, did you have something to add?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, that was really cool that we got to do is we got to learn a lot about the founding of SIGEP and everything that went into it. And we got to walk around the University of Richmond campus, and we got to learn about all the things that SIGEP has done that has revolutionized the fraternity world and been that fraternity that will be different. It was absolutely amazing learning everything that we've done.
Yeah, so kind of walk us through like the emotions and stuff you guys were feeling when you first got there. So like obviously like you guys booked your flights, we're getting out there, and then just like getting to the campus and like getting there and just seeing everybody else there and getting like all organized and stuff. Walk us through that.
Well, I got my flight reservations, and I saw I had a 2-hour layover in Detroit, so that was the first experience I had. Thankfully, I did research, and Detroit airport was really nice. It's got this nice tram that goes through it. Anyway, I digress. Tim, you and I kind of hung out. We're the first two to hung out, and Sean drove. So do you want to talk about your experience to the airport, and then I can go since I met you there?
Yeah, so I flew out of Rochester, so got up at 3:30 in the morning. So thank God I already have to get up at 4:30 for work, so it actually wasn't too bad. But get up to Rochester, getting ready to hop on the plane. The first thing that actually was kind of the funny part of my entire trip was I'm getting on, and there's a girl back behind me who had a sweatshirt on that I saw that had a Sigma and a Phi. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, do they let sweethearts go to Ruck? Since when was that a thing? But then later on, I saw it was like Sigma Phi, and I'm like, okay, that makes so much more sense. But then I flew into Chicago, got to meet one of the first guys, not from the chapter, that was also going to Ruck, who was, I can't remember the exact chapter in Illinois, but there were 4 of us that were getting on the flight from Chicago to Richmond. And then we landed down in Richmond at, I believe it was like 11:15. And then we sat down, waited, got to talk with a bunch of the other guys who were arriving. And then we all headed out on a coach bus at about 12:30, and that was kind of where the Ruck experience started. But yeah, it was really kind of, all right, we're out here now. What's going to go on now? So it was just a wait and see kind of on that first day.
So, Sean, talk about your experience with driving. Everyone else kind of got to meet up and meet some people.
Yeah.
You had a long haul all by yourself, getting yourself hyped up, all these emotions.
It was honestly great. I didn't have to wake up early. I actually got to sleep in that morning. I woke up at, I think it was like 8 a.m. Packed my bags at 8:30. Left Pennsylvania at 9 o'clock. Got to Richmond around, I think it was like noon. I got there at noon because they wanted us to get there between 11 and 1 p.m. So I got there at noon and there was nobody there. And we're like, the opening dinner doesn't start until 5 or 6 o'clock. Why'd they ask us to get here so early? So we got first dibs on all the food there, and which is probably really nice because they ended up running out of food for lunch that day. And I think they were just giving people like bags of chips and stuff like that afterwards because they ran out of food. But I got to meet all these great guys from across the country, people who weren't going to be in my group, but I probably wasn't going to talk to. And then I got to meet a lot of my group mates, and it was just awesome talking to all these other SIGEPs. Got to meet multiple chapter presidents, multiple people who are in positions like VP Comms. I got to learn a lot of things about how they run their chapters, things that they do, even before I got to meet my own group members. So driving was great, though. Loved driving, and they also reimburse you as well for driving.
That's nice.
You guys kind of walk through like what your week looked like for people that don't know about, like obviously like most of us have heard the stories about like what you kind of experience at Ruck, but kind of walk through the week, like how you guys went through it and just the different activities you guys did and share your different experiences.
I think kind of backpacking off of what something Sean said already is when I got to the airport, I got to the baggage claim area, which is where everyone was gathering. But even on my flight so I flew out of Madison, which I was surprised but also thankful that they let me fly out of Madison instead of O'Hare or General Mitchell in Milwaukee. But when I got to my terminal in Atlanta, there were like 20 other SIGEP guys there, and we instantly started talking to each other. And I've really never had an experience where people were so open to talking to each other and so open to conversation like Ruck. I mean, period. I've been to Conclave, I've been to CLA, I've been to, other conventions for other things, but this was the most that people were willing to talk and especially listen. But that was a continuing theme throughout the week. So it started with, like Sean said, we had a couple hours of downtime. We were staying in one of the dorms on Richmond's campus. Then we threw on our college shirts and we went to this dining hall, which we were told to sit next to sit at the tables that have our lanyard color. So I was purple, so I sat with the purple team. Then our coordinators came up, said hi. So I had Sheehan Walker and John Dougherty. I probably butchered your last name, John. I'm sorry. But it started out on a really good note for me because I started talking to the guys. And I'm like, oh, you're from Ohio State. Oh, you're from Michigan Theta. Oh, you're from Dartmouth. And Sheehan comes over and he's like, all right, guys, so here's the deal. In order to pick who goes first, there's a bucket of lanyards up there, but here's the trick. They're all purple. So he goes up there, he introduces us. There's this great prep talk given by the CFO of SIGEP in the Top Gun theme where he's pretending to be a flight sergeant. And then Sheehan goes up there and he's like, oh, look at this bucket of lanyards. He pulls it out and it's purple. So we ate first, and funnily enough, not funnily enough for some teams, I think Sean, your team was on there too, but my
team got the short straw, and we didn't get to eat, and the green team didn't get to eat either.
But our team motto after that was "We eat first." So that was kind of my introduction to not only my my purple team overall, but also my coordinators who were fantastic. So. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, so meeting my coordinators were Brad and Joe, and Brad and Joe just immediately off the bat, shaking your hands, getting to know you, and then sitting in the group, just hearing all these great and amazing things that Ruck has done in the past and the founding of Ruck, and how we were handpicked and selected. We are the best of the best in the country of SIGEPs. And what Ian was saying before, the experience of meeting other SIGEPs and just other people who are just as enthusiastic to be there like you are is unlike any other. Everyone wanted to be there. Everyone wanted to talk about their experiences, and they all wanted to grow and learn from Ruck. And you could tell that right off the bat. And the bonding of becoming more connected with your group mates started immediately. And after the dinner, we went back to our small groups and we started that. And Tim, you can talk about your dinner experience before we kind of move into the first small group experiences if you want.
Yeah. So when I showed up, I was lucky enough to be on Team Chuck, which was named in honor of Chuck White. So instead of being Team White, we were Team Chuck, which was where we then came up with the motto for our team was Chuck Runs Ruck, which ended up being an absolute blast to run with throughout the entire week. But when we sat down, you kind of got to know some of the people on the team and whatnot. And as they were introducing all the different guys who were going to be leading us and instructing us throughout the week, I was lucky enough to have Ryan Hamrick and Logan Holland. Hopefully I said their names right. But they were actually two of the youngest guys, and I believe they were Ruck rookie instructors. So I was almost on like the crash course dummy plane, it felt like. But it was an absolute blast. And I'll always remember that when we first met that night, we went with the typical, icebreakers of, what's your name, where are you from, all that good stuff. But the interesting aspect to throw us right into the idea of kind of being vulnerable and open to one another that Ryan threw for a question at us was, what's something that keeps you up at night? And so you automatically just began to kind of open up a little bit, which then allowed others to, kind of get to know, more deeply of an understanding about each and every one of us. And then the bond just began that night. I mean, I would say our first night, it definitely felt like we were, good friends, getting to talk to one another. But as we moved into day one and we had to start our day right out on the ropes course, after we went through that, it felt like we were just had unbreakable bonds and we were in it together through the entire thing.
At the end of the first day, so our first session was immediately after dinner, and it was like what, 3 or 2 hours, something like that. And I thought, I walked away from that and I started talking to these guys. I'm like, wait a minute, I can name every single one of these people, and majority of them I can reasonably guess where they're from, and I've known them for not even 2 hours. And the entire time we spend with our groups was less than, I think, 36 hours, maybe equal. I can pull up the schedule later and maybe check. But like, I talked to some of these guys still today, and some of the Ruck alumni I've talked to within our chapter, like Anthony Klemper, Chad Miramonte. They've stayed in contact with a lot of their guys, and if Anthony's actually coming to Conclave and he's looking to reunite with them. And I thought that was something that I've been told. That was something that I knew going into it. It's something that I expected, but I really didn't expect it to happen within 2 hours. And then our coordinators even got to know us way better. And Sheehan and John were also first generation Ruck leaders, which I thought definitely added to the experience of them. They told us at the end that they had a little bit of pressure on them to work that Ruck magic. And it exists. It exists. All three of us saw it.
Yeah.
And that was really one of my favorite parts, was just hearing all these experiences from Ruck and then actually going through it, with the exception of the ropes course, because we were the last group to go, and there was a tornado warning when we were right up there, ready to go, all clipped in, ready to go on the first obstacle, and we had to go back down, and they didn't reschedule it. But regardless, Ruck was still a fantastic time.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Ian and Tim said, that first night, you're just completely thrown into this situation, and by the end of the first session, you pretty much know the brothers that are in your group by name and by chapter at that point. In my group, we did you'd associate your name with a hand motion, like a visual motion, and an adjective as well, and we would go all the way around the room doing that. And then right after that, we did a cross the line, where you'd be given questions and you either stay on one side of the line or go to the other side of the line. And that really kind of just broke the ice and made people more willing to be trustworthy of each other, understand that other people are going through the same things you are going through, and understand the vulnerability that all of us have. And that was probably one of the best ways that you could have ever opened up Ruck for me. And I was absolutely just astounded on how well my Ruck facilitators put everything together. And Brad, he's been a Ruck facilitator plenty of times in the past, but Joe pretty much ran the show, and Joe is actually also a first-year Ruck facilitator, and he absolutely just knocked it out of the park. And everything he did, he was constantly pushing us to think harder, put more words behind a thought, and also just constantly be active and play an active role in our Ruck experience as well.
We had a great time with Cross the Line too. One of the questions was, do you wipe sitting down or standing up? And the room was pretty well split, right? I was on one side, I was on sitting down, okay, and there's another gentleman with me, Morgan Smith, and he won some people over by saying standing up and wiping is like pulling down your pants when you go in front of a urinal. And when you said cross the line, that's all I could think of. I'm so.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I'm surprised that like there's so many first year facilitators too, so it's awesome to hear that you guys still had like, I mean, not that you weren't gonna have an awesome experience, but that you guys still experienced, like you said, that Ruck magic. Because I felt like every time I've talked to guys that have gone to Ruck, like the names of all the facilitators are people who have just been doing it for years and years and years. And then like obviously like guys that I got to meet at Conclave as well, and so then it's just like it's awesome that they're bringing in this like next generation of people to like continue this, like you said, Ruck magic going forward. So what are some other the other like highlights that you guys got to experience throughout the week?
The ropes course is absolutely the biggest highlight I have to talk about. I'm sorry,
Must be
Ian,
nice.
not
Nice.
to
I'll just
not
leave.
to rain
Bye.
on you too much, but the ropes course was absolutely the most fun I had. Really building that trust and also the team working skills, kind of allowing others to lead as well as leading yourself, and the problem solving skills as well. Really challenged us as a group to work together and to think outside the box in some situations as well. And just being up on the ropes course as well, having to rely on your fellow brothers to be there, to be that helping hand when you need to, when you don't want to fall, basically. Our group was challenged to not use the safety rope very much, and we really pushed ourselves to not do that. While other groups were maybe holding on to it, we really pushed ourselves to get out of our comfort zones and to try our hardest. And I think we got the most out of the ropes course because of that. And we built a lot of trust. And like I said, ropes course is my favorite part, I think, of Ruck.
Yeah. I mean, I'll build off of that. I'm gonna kind of go along with Sean. My two favorite parts were the ropes course and then the ultimate frisbee tournament at the end. And once again, I'm sorry, Ian, but
I've heard about
You're
this
gonna make me talk.
legendary-
You're gonna make me talk about. You're gonna make me talk. Okay, I'll talk about it.
But for the ropes course, we got to do ours. Like, it was the very first thing we did first day we were there. So I'm personally not a huge fan of heights. And of course, we end up going on the one that's 2 stories up instead of 1. So I'm sitting there kind of going, great, here we go. But, you know, once we got up there and once we really started moving, I really kind of forgot about even being up that high. And it was more like I'm caring about helping my fellow brothers get across this thing. Because the biggest part of this ropes course, which people might not realize was a part of it, was you had to move as a team and you couldn't leave a brother behind, and you couldn't move ahead until everyone moved ahead. So it wasn't like a ropes course where you just walk through individually and kind of do your own thing. It was like you have to move as a complete team. So that's where there was a ton of communication, actually like relying on holding onto your shoulders or your brother's shoulders and like holding them up so they don't fall off, and if they do, offering a helping hand to get them back up, which was, it was just a super, it was a fantastic way to break the ice of getting everyone super close to one another, as well as creating that trust of, you know, I'm there to help you and I know you're there to help me. But then kind of moving on to the grand finale of things, we moved to the Ultimate Frisbee tournament where Team Chuck won the whole thing. So Chuck did indeed run Ruck. But it was an absolute blast. I mean, we had, you know, everyone flying all over the place. We had one guy who could throw at the length of the field, which made it a lot easier to try to play offense at least. But it was a complete blast from start to finish. And I also don't know if I've ever seen one of the Ruck facilitators get so passionate about any little thing involving a game as I saw Ryan screaming at refs during the Ultimate Frisbee games. I'm like, dude, we're playing Ultimate Frisbee for fun, and
Yeah,
he
was screaming at the top.
Screaming at the refs.
I think he yelled at me at one point.
It was awesome.
We saw him
Wow.
running across the field, just yelling at the ref about a line call. And we're like, oh my gosh, someone is getting heated over Ultimate Frisbee.
Well, you guys both kicked me. Jeez, first it's my favorite part's the rope course. Then it's yeah, my favorite part was Ultimate Frisbee when Team Chuck beat Team Purple twice, and we took in the sudden death. So for context, Team Purple was coming into it pretty hyped up. We had a very good group of people, and one of our facilitators, Sheehan, was playing too, so that made it more fun. We won our first one, then we lost, but then we made it all the way back up the losers bracket to sudden death against Team Chuck, and only to take the L, unfortunately, that last game. So thanks, Tim, for letting me relive that. But obviously, the ropes course wasn't my favorite part, but I'll kind of split into two. So my overall favorite part was kind of looking at Wisconsin Theta in the grand scheme of SIGEP. Kind of what I mean by that is Sean talked about the history walk we had, and kind of thinking about it that way, about how SIGEPs have always been innovators and how we've always challenged processes and how we've always aimed to be at the pinnacle of Greek life. And I want to take that back to Wisconsin Theta a little bit and say, hey, even though we may be the pinnacle right now, the goal is still moving, right? Do we want to just be the pinnacle of Platteville? Do we want to be the pinnacle of Wisconsin? Do we want to be the pinnacle of the world? We need to keep on moving forward. And part of that, too, is kind of just how to work on problems. Within our small group of 20 guys, I sat next to Jacob from Texas, and we both had pretty similar chapter sizes, but we had relatively different problems. One of Wisconsin Theta's problems in historic times that's hopefully being addressed right now, that our executive board is working very hard on, like Tim is retention. And when I talked to him about it, he's like, we don't have that problem. And just kind of hearing how his chapter operates and how they change their perspective on retention and bringing that back to was one of my favorite parts about Ruck, just hearing all these different ideas from different chapters. And it's not like CLA to where you get one day to hear it all and, try to process it and do it when you come back. You get several days to, and you get dinners with these guys. So I talked to a couple guys about how we do BMS, because we do it very differently than other chapters do. And I sat down and had a whole conversation over lunch with a gentleman about it. So kind of just seeing in the grand scheme of things, what SIGEP can do for not only our chapter, but what our chapter can do for other chapters. And another person to talk to about that can be Jacob Feltz, because we've had his position as vice president of the learning communities, but Nationals has just brought it in to be official, and he has helped other chapters like at CLA with it. Now, my fun favorite thing that I did is we had a dance competition to where Connor from Pennsylvania New, very small chapter, very small university, he taught us how to do the Soulja Boy. And I know that somewhere Nationals has that video, and I am scared for the day that they post it and you have to see me doing the Soulja Boy. But
I was going to ask for a demonstration right now for the...
You have a wireless headset on right now. You can do the Soulja Boy for us right now.
Maybe towards the end.
Okay.
To close the podcast, we can get the Soulja Boy.
But, yeah,
go ahead if you had more to talk about there.
I was just gonna say, even though I didn't get to do the ropes course, I still had a fantastic time at Ruck. Even though I got second in the Ultimate Frisbee tournament. Thanks for asking, Tim.
I mean,
yeah.
the losers bracket run is kind of impressive, though. I mean, the fact that you made it all the way back.
It was very high. Yeah, but Tim, do you have your lanyard with you right now?
I will say, it's in my bag, I think. You give me
I gotta grab my bag.
Hold up. It's right here. Yes, sir.
No, I asked for your lanyard, not for your dollar.
This is my lanyard.
He's flexing on you harder.
Yeah.
I don't know where I put my bag, actually. So.
Yeah, well,
we went
Tim, guess what?
undefeated right the whole way up.
Tim, I still got your challenge coin.
But
He's not getting it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even going off what Ian said, I mean, obviously me and Sean talked about more of the physical aspects of it, where they kind of tried to bring in the sound body. But there were nights that I stayed up until 2 and 3 in the morning talking with brothers just about different situations and trying to solve different problems that, we have fixed or have solutions to for us that, these other guys can try. And them doing the same thing for us. And it was just one of those, it was incredible how fast the time went. It was like you looked at the beginning of the week and you're like, we have 7 hours of small group sessions in the afternoon on Friday. This is going to take forever. But then you go sit in the small group sessions and all of a sudden it's 7 o'clock and you're like, well, I swore it was 1 o'clock. Like it was just incredible how fast the time went. And the learning aspect of being in those groups was easily just as valuable as the fun times of actually having the physical exercise.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off the learning experience about Ruck. Obviously, Ruck isn't just about having fun and just doing stuff with brothers. It's also about the learning about the leadership aspects. And we learned about these 5 key important parts about leadership. Pull it out here so you guys can look at it.
Hey, Sean, I have the book.
I got the book right here as well next to me.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually have the book. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Not to flex or anything, but I got it signed by all the boys, and then Sheen and John up there.
Yeah. So
that's better than an ultimate frisbee medal right there, Tim.
The learning aspect of Ruck, they focus on the 5 things and mentioned in the book that Ian got: modeling the way, sharing an inspired vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. And through each of these specific topics, our groups really delved into specific things, specific scenarios, ways that we can improve upon ourselves. Looking back at how we are leaders, we had people fill out surveys for us and how we are leaders, and we looked at how I might think of myself as a leader and how they think of myself as a leader. And you can kind of reflect on that and think about the things that you do in the chapter, in the campus community, and how you can work on improving yourself to be a better leader as well in all those situations. I know myself, I'm working really hard towards being a good student body vice president and making sure Student Senate does well in this next school year. And Ruck has really allowed me to learn a lot about how I am in being a leader and how I can work to improve Student Senate. I'm already putting stuff into motion and to being a better student body vice president as well, working on encouraging ideas for this next fall and how to improve our campus, as well as just working on Student Senate in general. Ruck has really allowed me to learn about that. Just something before I hand it off to Ian or Tim, this is probably one of my favorite things we did. We had the personal values cards and we talked about the 5 things that matter the most to you. And the 5 things that I had were my biggest things, where my biggest values were having growth, dependability, friendship, acceptance, and purpose. And we talked about each of these things like in depth about this with like small groups. And after Ruck, I actually wanted to change mine a little bit. And Ruck allowed me to kind of realize some of the things that I really want to work on. And having these cards, I'm going to go through these cards at the end of the semester. I'm going to look back on that and kind of think about if I'm still keeping up to these values and beliefs I have about myself, because it's always really important to think about that.
Yeah, my big thing that I'd like to at least bring back from it is there's this SIG-EP that you may or may not know. His name's Tom Barton, but he has messaged us a lot, the 3 of us, Ruck Scholars from Wisconsin Theta, a lot in recent times. And one of the things that he said to me, I believe in a personal message, was, now that we've gone through Ruck, we need to realize how good can we be. And at first I read that and it didn't really hit with me, but about an hour later I looked back on it and it really, really struck a chord with me on the inside of like, wow, this was the Top Gun program. What am I going to take from it, and how good can I be? And that's something that I want to take back to Wisconsin Theta. We've had a lot of big milestones this last year. We won homecoming. Thank you, Dom. We had a 3.6 average GPA this last semester, which is a chapter record. We have 30 men who will be starting the semester as SIGEPs, which is also another recent record. We have a very large BMS pool. We have a very motivated chapter, but how good can we be, right? Is this the peak of SIGEP, and then it's either plateauing or even worse, going down from here? My answer is no. My answer is no, and I hope everyone, every future president and every future SIGEP at Wisconsin Theta after me will agree that we're never at that pinnacle. We're never at the top. We may recede for a little bit, right? We may not be at the top numbers wise. We may not have, RHA president. We may not have this or that. But as long as we always keep in mind that mentality of thinking, how good can we be, and continuously developing ourselves and continuously improving Wisconsin Theta, we will consistently be the best on campus. And we will realize how good we can be, at least in the 4 years that the majority of members are in SIGEP. But past that, the next members will say, all right, we can be better than them. We can do better. And that's not to be an insult. It's simply saying that there is always room for improvement. And the main two ways that I can see that in our chapter is really our overall chapter culture. There's some changes going around that could be a little bit, in a better scenario, but we just need to take what we have and we need to work with it. I can't really get into specifics, but it's more of, the situation's what you make out of it, and kind of contextualizing it and looking in the big picture and saying, hey, it may suck in the short run, but we got to look at the delayed gratification here of, 5-7 years down the line, what we'll be able to have. And I think that's a big change that could come to our chapter that could really plant the seeds of continuous development for years to come. Kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but overall, there are lots of things that I want to take back from Ruck to the chapter. Not all at once, because that won't work, but having Tim and Sean here go through the same experience as me, they'll hopefully agree with me in saying that there's a lot we want to take back, but it's a matter of what's the best way to take it back, and what's the best order, who do we run this by first, which I've already got a plan laid out for, and I'm going to run by the executive board when we meet next month. So I'm done talking. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. You had a lot of great things to say, Ian.
That's fair.
So, bouncing off that, though, what do you guys want to bring back to the chapter once you come back this semester?
Yeah, I guess I'll hop in. So I guess kind of continuing to go off with what Ian said. Obviously, especially with being in the position of VP MD, your main goal is to develop guys through SIGEP. And I think a lot of guys have seen how SIGEP can change them, especially a lot of the alumni and whatnot. But I think that's a big thing that we need to change right up front with the freshmen, and I think is really a big thing that can really change that issue of retention. And I want to continue to push on, you joined for a reason, and we picked you to join for a reason. We understand, you may hold these values and whatnot, but, anyone can say they hold the values. It's actually putting yourself through that and pushing yourself to live those values each and every day, and to push yourself to limits that you didn't know that you could reach, and ask yourself, how good could you be? And that's just the one thing I really want to bring home, not only just with the freshmen, though. As we have the guys who are moving up through the challenges into the upper levels, and you're getting ready for graduation and whatnot, to really push yourself and go, what can I do to help give back to the chapter, as well as continue to develop myself into the best person I can be, to put myself out there and offer my employers, or yourself as your own employer maybe one day, to become one of the best. And that is truly what SIGEP pushes us to do. As we went through that walk through the history and whatnot, yes, we started small, and you're going to fiddle, fumble, and struggle as you go along. But to set yourself up with small, progressive steps to reach that final goal of reaching that ultimate, I am at the top, and feeling that true value within yourself and seeing it reflect back upon the people around you is really what I want to see come out of this chapter. And I think we're beginning to move into that phase, but it's something that has to continue to go, because it can take 1 year and things could phase out. You really don't want to see it, but it's a possibility. There are people that go through, or other chapters that go through membership reviews and stuff like that, and you lose a lot of things pretty quickly. But I think that's the one thing that we can kind of begin to push on as well is, yes, we can develop ourselves to become these great men, but we also want to continue for the people behind us to follow, maybe not necessarily directly in our footsteps, but to see them grow as men as well, and to get the same value out of SIGEP that each and every one of us has gotten. And that's really kind of my big goal, is to see that every member who joins SIGEP gets that true value and sees that growth within themselves, to know that, yes, this was probably one of the best decisions of my life.
It's kind of something that I want to bring two things really back to Wisconsin Theta and Platteville. First, my biggest thing is something that I always work on, and I really kind of saw the importance of working on, is supporting others and celebrating the small achievements. The biggest thing that rings out in my mind is the phrase "inch by inch," and that every achievement, no matter how small, is something to celebrate. And if you're say rebuilding an organization like Student Senate, celebrating those small things can really show a group of people that, you guys are doing great things. We are on the path to success, and that we have to keep working harder to become better. It's not going to get any easier. And we've certainly seen that. Just SIGEP in general, talking about the history walk, you always have to look for ways to become better. And Wisconsin Theta is always working hard towards that. SIGEP in general has, and to look back at the things that SIGEP has done on a national level, things that other fraternities thought is completely out of this world for fraternity life, going to becoming a dry facility, allowing all sexualities to join the chapter, stuff like that, removing hazing and the pledging process. Those are things that were earth-shattering to the Greek life community, and that SIGEP did first. Having all chapters have an equal representation at conclave, that is something that is just crazy to believe, and that reflects in our chapters as well, is that when brothers join our chapters, they can run for any position and they're an automatic voting member. So tangented a little bit there, but as something else I would like to bring back is encouraging others to become involved and make a difference in their communities and in their campuses. So that's something I've always wanted to come back to Platteville and encourage is people to become involved in our student governance. And at first it seems kind of silly. Student governance doesn't seem like it does a lot, but that's the problem there. It doesn't do a lot, and we can work on improving that and changing that, and we can be the leaders that will shape the future of UW Platteville. So that's something that I'm really excited to bring back.
Yeah. That was a lot of stuff that I'm excited to see, like how you guys incorporate it into the chapter and just the different changes that you guys are gonna make. I guess not only with the chapter, but even like within Platteville as a community, with like Student Senate and any other organizations that you guys are a part of. So that's gonna be really exciting. So kind of the next kind of question that we had for you guys was like, being around all these different like minds and having these deep and critical conversations with everybody, what is some like the biggest advice that you guys maybe got at Ruck that you guys also want to share with everybody that's listening, and pass on as well?
A common theme in my group was, so my Ruck group had a very diverse group of individuals from not only where our chapters were from, but also from age. We had several people who were rising sophomores. And the discussion that they I didn't really know, we didn't really reveal that till the very end of, we knew that some people there were like a few sophomores, but some guys were like 18. And myself, I'm got a couple gray hairs, I'm 21. There were only 3 other guys that were my age, and it was the president of Dartmouth and the president of, I can't remember where he's from, but there were only 3 of us, and having that really diverse group of thoughts kind of brought out some other emotions that I really hadn't thought about. So there were some guys who the only reason they came to Ruck is because they talked to their parents, and their parents were super proud of them, and that's why they came. They really were on the fence about it. My roommate, Ricky, he was on the fence about it until his mom called and told him how proud she was of him, and then he decided to come, and it was fantastic. So the biggest piece of advice that I can give to at least younger chapter members or even younger SIGEPs around the nation is that you gotta take hold of the flame, right? Although this thing may sit in front of you and be really daunting, like filling out an application for Ruck, filling out an application for Tragos, saying yes to Ruck or saying yes to Tragos, saying yes when someone says, hey, you should run for vice president of finance or you should run for standards board. You can't just let that slide, right? You got to take hold of it. If it burns you at first, right, you gotta learn from that burn, and you gotta enjoy it, because that's how you're able to grow. Little weird metaphor, but it carries along with it. And when things don't go as planned, right? If you plan for this great big recruitment event outside and it starts to rain, you got to learn from the rain, right? You can either go outside and I don't know, play tug of war. If it's light rain, carry on with the event, or have your backup stuff in plan. And learning from every experience that you can is really the most important part that I can give. I said it at Ruck, but there's a difference between a failure and a mistake. A mistake is something that happens once and then never happens again because you learn from it. A failure is something that happens over and over and over again. And understanding the difference between the two and only making mistakes is fine. It's human. I've made plenty in my tenure here at Wisconsin Theta and many times before that, but they're not failures. I've learned to change myself from it, and Ruck was kind of a great way to not make a mistake but still prevent failures from happening. The last thing I'd like to say, kind of tying it back to the Soldier Boy thing, is that this was a team of 10 people that we had to come up with a dance, and only one guy, Connor, knew what the dance was. So he had to pass it all, the whole thing down to us in 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, I was convinced that in any aspect of regular day-to-day life, anyone has the ability to lead. Not everyone is born a leader. Most people aren't born a leader, but everyone can learn to become a leader and become a strong leader through their interactions with people in life. And it can happen from a day-to-day. And small things like, teaching a couple of guys how to do the Soldier Boy, or something as simple as saying, hey, I'm proud of you, can go a long way, and that can change a life. I only knew these guys for 72 hours, and as we were saying our goodbyes after our last group session, some of them said some very, very heartwarming things about me that I will never forget. And I knew them for 3 days, but they gave me some of the best, really the best, not only feedback, but also the best I've felt probably my entire life, just based on that one interaction that we've had just at Ruck, which is why I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing more of them at Conclave. Those were my main takeaways from Ruck.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of build off what Ian said a little bit. One of the biggest things that I really took away coming out of Ruck was you're going to mess up and make mistakes in life. There's no avoiding that. But the biggest thing that you need to do is to step back and to actually diagnose that mistake and learn from it. Because if you're going to dwell on it, it's only going to make matters worse, and it's just going to lead to more mistakes. And that was something that really seemed to hit home of, no matter what you do in any aspect of life, you can't be perfect. And I know as SIGEPs, it's almost something that seems kind of driven into us as, we strive to be the best, so it almost feels like you kind of strive for perfection. But that's not always going to hit home all the time. So you need to be able to analyze where you messed up and to really grow from that. And that is what can really separate you from the average Joe on the side of the street. But on top of going off of that idea of making mistakes and whatnot, another big thing that I took away from my facilitator, Ryan, was when you're presented an opportunity, it doesn't matter how big or how small, go ahead and take a grasp of it, because that opportunity is not going to be there forever, and you need to make the most of it. And his kind of version of that that he kind of told us about was he currently is actually rather successful, as he has a company out in it was somewhere in California where they're delivering food and whatnot, kind of like an Uber. But he had a friend who offered him this opportunity to go to a conference in Chicago for real estate. And Brian is just kind of starting to jump into it, but he doesn't know a ton about it. But he knew the guy very well, and he knows that he's very successful. And he goes, well, if this guy's offering me to go to a conference, there's no reason not to. And when he went to go register, the price to go to the conference was like $1,500. But he went, it's an opportunity, I'm taking it. And so now he's already making money off of units that he's buying in Milwaukee. And he's learning on the fly. And it's all because he said yes to the opportunity from a friend. If you continue to turn down opportunities you get presented to you, there's no room to grow unless you force yourself into your own opportunities, which is just going to be that much harder instead of taking the ones presented to you. So that's kind of my big two pieces of advice that are actually pretty similar to Ian's, but learn from your mistakes and take the opportunities that are presented to you, because they aren't going to be there forever.
The two biggest things I have for advice is completely different from what Tim and Ian said. In terms of my advice, that things that I've learned from Ruck and about myself, as well as I struggle with a lot of self-image issues, and talking about celebrating your accomplishments is something that that's the biggest piece of advice I can really give to people coming from Ruck. Celebrating everything that you've done, looking at the smallest things. You know, I woke up this morning and I made my bed. Yeah, I can come home and I can say, well, I made my bed. At least I did something productive today. Being you is really important. Talking about those core values, that is something that you should always hold high above your head. These are the values that I hold near and dear to my heart. And if all else fails, I can come back and resort to these values. And one other thing, I talked a little bit about it earlier, is compliments and celebrating achievement. That is something that I've learned is the biggest thing you can do to encourage someone and to support someone, is complimenting them on something that they put a lot of work into, or just complimenting them about just themselves, letting them know that they're doing the right thing, just encouraging conversations with them. That means the world of a difference. I know that I can say that for a fact. That's probably one of the reasons why I joined SIGEP, is because Anthony Klemp reached out to me, and he was just so enthusiastic about SIGEP. He shared that passion, and that's something that I want to make sure that other people do, is share their passion for SIGEP and their passion for other things. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Take advantage of that and share that with other people. So those are the things I have for advice. Not really worded well, but yeah, that's my advice.
All advice is good advice for the most part.
Very true.
We appreciate you guys sharing this. There's been a lot of information, a lot of good advice, and a lot of things that anyone who's listening can look forward to. Especially those who want to go to Ruck, those who've been reflecting on Ruck. I know this entire time, though my Ruck was virtual, I definitely spent a lot of time reflecting and kind of thinking back this whole conversation that we've been having back and forth of my, short time in Ruck. So with that kind of closing out, is there anything else you guys want to, let the world know what's going on in your lives?
Tomorrow, I'm going on a 185-foot boom lift at JLG. I'm so excited to do that.
Just working away in the foundry.
Just working? Where are you guys working?
I'm interning as a process engineer at Alliant Castings in Winona, Minnesota. But this week we're actually rather lucky that we have the week off of production. Instead, we're kind of focusing on maintenance. But it's been 90 degrees with about 90% humidity here this week. And that is not a fun place to be when it's that hot.
I
But
forget we're actually kind of close to each other.
Yeah, I was gonna say my weather's been awful here too. It's like 95 with 90% humidity. It's not a good time. I can imagine.
It's also been rainy, but I get to flex on Tim for once. I work in an air-conditioned facility at a comfortable 67 degrees every day. I work as a as a firmware engineer at Electronic Theater Controls, which does theater lighting, and other things like architectural lighting and rigging. But my current project is we can't get a certain processor, so we have to switch boards over from one processor to another. And it's really great hands-on work for me in a area that's really not taught in most college curriculum of the software engineer, even electrical engineer or computer science, which is pretty fun. But I don't get to go on boom lifts like Sean do. I get to take apart consoles. I get to sometimes try to burn myself with a soldering iron. I guess that's cool.
Yeah, and I'm working as a summer intern for industrial engineering in McAllisburg, Pennsylvania at JLG Industries, who produces boom lifts and telehandlers. And I work in their frame fabrication department. And the interns get to do the JLG experience tomorrow, which is riding in the largest boom lift available on the market, which goes up 185 feet in the air. So if I have a fear of heights, we're conquering it again and again.
Well, you went on the ropes course, so you shouldn't have one.
Oh, but you just gotta make different experience, man. Being in a little basket 185 feet in the air is gonna be something once in a lifetime. That's all I can say.
Yeah, before we close out, I just want to say too, like, thank you guys for hopping on and sharing this story. You guys are obviously like our first, not me and Dom guests on the podcast, so to let you guys be the ones that kind of lead off with everybody and be able to share all these awesome experiences was just a great opportunity. And then I already know Ian and I talked about it before we started recording, but we'd love to have you guys on to do individual pods as well. Just let us know and we'll hook that stuff up, because each of you guys with your different positions and your different experiences with SIGEP have your own stories to tell outside of just Ruck. And I'm sure that the audience would like to hear about that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you. We always appreciate it.
Really glad we could kind of just spit back out what we all took in, because it's a lot for one person. And even though there's 3 of us here, it's still a lot because we all had the same, round circle experience of Ruck, but we all had so many different individual things. And I messaged, I think almost every single executive board member with ideas for like things like, hey, I heard this at Ruck. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is something that would be beneficial for us? And like I said, I've started to integrate it a little bit. We're going to start doing the win of the week. So we already have 2 awards that we close out our chapter meeting with, but having one where it's open to the entire chapter and it's like, hey, what's happened this week that's been awesome? And then we vote on whoever has like the biggest win of the week. So for example, I don't know, Sean got an A- on some ITM thing. All I hear is metals manufacturing, and it just goes in one ear and out the other. And that may be something huge that's totally worth celebrating. Or it may be like, hey, I was voted student senate vice president. We had a very successful BMS event. I helped recruit a guy. Just small things every week that we can see we can celebrate like what's going on in other people's lives. But anyways, thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it.
Now, one thing to take, just my thing is, if you learned anything or got anything out of this podcast this week, is apply for Ruck. It is a life-changing experience. Cannot recommend it enough.
And everyone can get in. Everyone can get in. There were freshmen in my group, rising sophomores, and there were people who have had positions, people who haven't had positions. So we now know, what the selection process is like, and we now know that anyone can go to Ruck.
I think that's like the most. Sorry, Tim. I'll let you go before I say something.
Yeah. I mean, Sean kind of took the words from my mouth there. I was just about to say, I mean, to any undergrad who gets a chance, do not miss the opportunity to go to Ruck. I mean, even you guys that went to the virtual one, I had guys in my group that went to the virtual one, and they went, this was nothing even close to what that was like. It's a completely different experience, and it's well worth anyone's time. And it was easily probably one of the most life-changing and honestly eye-opening moments for many of us. Even to see the people in your group just change within a week too was rather incredible. On top of seeing yourself change, so to anyone who gets a chance, please apply, and I hope that you guys get the chance to go through what us three got to this past summer here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think Ian's point was like very, very important, just because I think most of the time, like, Ruck is seen as, like, again, like you talked about, it's very prestigious to get into, and most people think like, oh, you got to be later in your career, but the fact that you guys had freshmen in there and like people that are just going into sophomore year, like, yeah, apply. Anybody can get in. It's a good experience, like how life-changing it was for these guys and any of the other Ruck guys. We're working on getting you guys on the pod as well to come talk about stuff, so that'd be a fun one with like everybody. But yeah, thank you guys again for this. Dom, you got anything to close out before we head out?
I don't think any big. I think I just really want to thank you guys. I know it's kind of, beating that horse, saying thank you, but it really does mean a lot that you guys talking about your experiences. Ruck, I think as Ian definitely said in the beginning, it's something you only really heard about by word of mouth, but being able to talk about these experiences definitely gives someone a little bit more inside information, maybe in hopes that not only they would apply, but they get a better understanding about what SIGEP really is about and just how we want the best for each individual and want us to grow into the best person that they can be, and how Ruck is such an amazing opportunity in of itself. So really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys.
Yeah, well.
So, is Ian gonna do the Soldier Boy for us now?
Oh yes, Ian,
I'll make you guys a deal, because it's gonna be weird if there's no music, and I don't trust Bardell enough to superimpose music. If you see me in person and you ask me, I will. That is a promise. I will keep up to date on it. I will do it in person, but I don't trust it, because I really don't want to see me doing it here with no music, and then it's even weirder than it already is. So if you see me in person and you ask me, I will do it once.
Can we get it on the Wisconsin Theta page?
No.
Oh man, that's
no.
That's a heartbreaker.
Right.
Heartbreaker. But you guys heard it here. If you see Ian in person, ask him to do the Soldier Boy, and he'll do it for you.
Great! I can't wait till every SIGEP across the country sees this, and then I get asked by Gary Keefe at Grand Chapter Conclave to do the Soldier Boy.
You gotta walk up in Conclave in the middle of the awards ceremony, in between like silver and gold butt cups.
I mean, what I'm really hoping for is like people are gonna hear this like sometime down the line, and like you're gonna be like a 50-year-old like alum, and some guy like walks up to you and is like, Ian, I heard you can do the Soldier Boy really good.
It'll be at like some banquet. Some alumni is just gonna tell the current president, like, hey, you see this old guy over here? Please, for the love of God, just say, Ian Seidler, get up here and do this Soldier Boy. And I'm gonna grunt and groan. I'll probably have a knee replacement by then. I'll have like worse knees than Solberger. I'll get up there and I'll probably like fold over, but I guess I only have myself to blame, and Connor.
All right, well, with that, we're gonna end it there. Thank you everybody for listening, and look out for episode 4. We've got some cool guests lined up, so we'll see you then. See ya.
Take care.